Dak Prescott to the Saints and Derek Carr to the Cowboys. Could New Orleans and Dallas really swap quarterbacks? I mean, what? So when this popped up, I was befuddled. I was shocked. I didn't know what channel I would be seeing. I didn't know what insane, delusional clickbait situation I'd be walking into. I was not expecting to be walking into AFR. I was not expecting to be walking in here. So, I mean, I can't wait to hear this because this is wild. This is bananas and pajamas. This is absolutely insane. So, I mean, let's just go along for the ride, ladies and gentlemen. Like Willy Wonka, like the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory scene where they're on the boat and they're going through the tunnel and they're seeing horrifying, terrible things show up on the walls of the tunnel. They're seeing spiders and lizards and all kind of stuff on there. Let's just go on that ride. Let's just see where this takes us. We'll react like only we can do. I expect you to be in the comments, my comments, not the comments in this video. I expect you to be down below in the comments reacting, and then I'll react along with you. Here we go. Y'all ready? Buckle up. Let's go.
I don't know that I love this idea.
God,
I love part of this idea, which means
Christ.
Derek Carr wouldn't be the Saints quarterback anymore. So Bill Barnwell, who does a really good job over at ESPN, has a piece up at ESPN.com that's got to be a 5,000-word feature. And it's so rare because nobody writes 5,000-word features anymore because it's impractical. Like, all the data suggests people don't sit down and read a feature for 30 minutes. It's just, that's why you so seldom see them. People want quick, short, go, get to the point, boom, move on. It's just the nature of society. Now, well, I guess you can get away with it when it's Dak Prescott and his contract and it's the Dallas Cowboys because of their reach and all the appeal therein. But I am someone who will sit down and read this, and Bill Barnwell did a really masterful job with it. And it's Dak Prescott's Cowboys future, new contract or test free agency. And so Barnwell in this piece goes through these large-scale different sections about Dak's contract and everything. And there's this feature, like there's this part of the line, there's this part that's like jump to a topic. The road that led to the impasse, the no trade, no tag clause, the inexplicable quote from Jerry Jones, can the Cowboys afford their core? How does Dak compare to other quarterbacks? Where does Lamar have to do with this? What could Prescott's deal look like? Who could Dallas target if he walks? And should the Cowboys actually move on? Like, those are, if you don't read the whole thing, you go to any one of those sections. Again, this is like a 5,000-word expose. The point that I will direct your attention.
I wasn't going to really talk about this, but like if your demographic are sports fans who are paying for ESPN Plus and are on ESPN.com, like that is the demographic who would want to read a 5,000-word exclusive. It's the same people, like if you're paying for the Wall Street Journal, like you're probably okay reading a lengthy piece in said Wall Street Journal. So, I mean, it works with YouTube too, or like if you're depending on the content you make, like some content is better for 45 to an hour long videos, some content is better for 5-minute videos. And your audience will tell you that. So because the average attention span, all that is lower, doesn't mean that there's not a place for this kind of content.
Attention to here is the who could Dallas target if he walks? And there's some interesting names. The most obvious is Trey Lance, who is already on the roster. Trey Lance was the former number 3 overall pick of San Francisco. We know it didn't work out there. And Trey Lance is now a member of the Dallas Cowboys. That's probably the most likely scenario. They also lay out a scenario that would include several free agents. I told you, this is a long, I'm still scrolling. Kirk Cousins. Now, this makes sense if you just think about it intuitively. The Falcons signed Kirk Cousins, and then they promptly went and drafted Michael Penix 8th overall.
Yeah,
so if Penix develops this year, it's plausible to think next year the Falcons could try to get some value for Cousins if they're going to make Penix their franchise quarterback. And then the one we should pay attention to, he mentions Derek Carr.
All right, here we go.
He also mentioned Daniel.
All right, if the Saints disappoint this season, they will likely end up moving on from Carr. Agreed. Who only has $10 million in guarantees left on his deal after the season. They would struggle to eat the $40 million in dead money from his contract if they trade him after the season, but they could designate him as a post-June 1 release. This is like the same as Lattimore situation we talked about a couple weeks ago. To free up more than $30 million in short-term space, that could come in handy if they decide to try and sign Prescott. Carr's in the same bucket with Cousins, as a lesser, older version of Prescott, albeit with more late-game heroics given his propensity for fourth-quarter comeback victories. His ability to protect the football and avoid turnovers could appeal to the Cowboys if they plan on winning games with their defense, which, if that's the case, why they let Dan Quinn go? And they should be able to land Carr at about half the price of what they would pay Prescott on a new deal. Yeah, so I mean, part of that is true. Like, part of that is true, I guess, if the Saints do want to move on from Carr. But the second part, like, it's harder if the Saints disappoint this season, then you would assume Carr's value is going to be lower. And if his value is lower, it's probably because all the positives that Barnwell laid out in the second paragraph didn't exist. So it's one of those things where it's like, can B exist without A? Can A exist without B? Because if Derek Carr does limit turnovers and he does have fourth quarter comeback victories and the Saints don't disappoint, then Carr is not moving on. So it's like one of those things where it's a bit of a Sudoku puzzle. I understand it's a hypothetical article from Bill, but
Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold, and then the possibility of drafting Dak Prescott's replacement.
Yeah.
Let me read for you just very quickly what Bill Barnwell wrote about Derek Carr and the possibility of Derek Carr going to Dallas. Here's what he wrote.
All right, I just read that, right?
If Derek Carr underwhelms this year and the Saints want to move on, Dallas could look at Derek Carr as a possible veteran replacement. Now, I want to say that I fundamentally disagree with this point from Bill Barnwell because...
All right, I'm going to jump in. Let me make this real clear. It would kind of make sense for Dallas, like, in a way, if the Saints do want to get rid of Carr and Carr's available and they need to figure out a bridge like that. Okay. It does not make sense for the Saints in any capacity to take on Dak Prescott's contract. Like, I don't see the whole, like, could they swap quarterbacks, Prescott to Saints? That's nuts. And it's not possible. It's not an option. It's not going to happen. It can't happen. I mean, it's ridiculous. So that is a absolute 0% chance that Prescott is even entertained by the Saints. Cousins, Carr, players like that, if the Cowboys did move off Prescott, those guys do kind of make sense, but that's about it.
There's two scenarios. Number one, if Derek Carr plays well, then the Saints are going to retain him. They restructured his deal.
Yeah.
I have said and maintained the Saints are financially bound to Derek Carr for 2 more years because of the restructuring of the deal. I cannot imagine a world where the New Orleans Saints eat $40 million in dead money on Derek Carr's contract.
Yeah, they will not.
Even if you've designated post-June 1, and so it's lesser next year, you're still, again, kicking the can down the road, which they do, but you're still eating $40 million in dead money, and I can't see them doing that. I just can't see that as a scenario. So Derek Carr, I think, is going to be on the New Orleans Saints roster this year and next year, no matter what.
Probably, yeah.
But if he plays well, he's back. And if he plays poorly, and even if you play out the scenario that Barnwell just unfolded, if Derek Carr plays poorly and the Saints do move on from him, what team's going to want to go make him their franchise quarterback? It's
right. Like, that's kind of what I was saying, that A and B can't be true together. So, again, I understand it's a hypothetical article, but it's kind of fundamentally, it's like, that doesn't really make sense. Same with Cousins. Like, if the Falcons basically cut Cousins after 1 year, he'll find a landing spot, but I don't think Dallas would be the team that's like, ooh, that's our guy.
It's implausible. At that point, it would be like, all right, you are a failed starter in Oakland. You're a failed starter in New Orleans. 2 teams have tried to make you their franchise. You're not that. The best you're going to be is effectively what Jameis Winston now is Cleveland, where you've got your guy in Deshaun Watson, who's the $200 million quarterback. I get it. That's not a great deal. It's not a great contract. We understand all that. But Jameis isn't going there to compete with Deshaun Watson to be the starter. He's going to Cleveland to be the backup to Deshaun Watson. That's effectively what he is now. So that there's no difference for Derek Carr if he busts here in New Orleans another season. So all that to say, I don't know why Dallas would sign Derek Carr. The flip side of that is, if the Saints did move on from Derek Carr and had $40 million in debt.
Yeah, they definitely can't sign Dak Prescott. They wouldn't sign Dak Prescott. He's the opposite of what the Saints would need to do. That's not even factoring in that the Saints have Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler. So if they do move on from Carr, then you would think like, well, Rattler or Hayner's probably going to get a chance here unless they haven't developed to that level. And if they haven't developed to that level, you probably just go sign like a 1-year guy like a Joe Flacco, bring him in for a year, let them get that last year of development or whatever, and then one of them takes it on. But you don't go sign a guy for $50-something million a year like Dak Prescott way past his prime. That makes absolutely no sense.
You had cap money. You don't have enough money to pay Dak Prescott. Now,
I don't think Prescott's even that much of an upgrade over Carr anyway. So like I don't like Carr is a super cheap contract. Like now that the landscape has kind of shifted a little bit with Trevor Lawrence and the money that Dak wants, like what you're hearing from him wanting like $60 million a year. The fact that Derek Carr is what is he, like the 19th highest paid quarterback or something like that right now, like that is a super. If you look at Baker Mayfield's contract and Kirk Cousins' contract and then you look at Carr, it's like, okay, this isn't that bad. Like this is pretty chill. Like if you're gonna have a established veteran quarterback, Carr's contract is pretty nice. So the Saints really don't have a reason, money-wise, to move off of Carr. He's pretty stable. Even if we got the production last year, which wasn't horrible, the results were horrible, but the production wasn't that horrible. Even if we get that from Carr, like it's kind of worth just having him on the roster because of what's happening with the rest of the NFL. So whether you think Carr is going to lead us to a Super Bowl or not, like the contract is pretty team friendly.
I would prefer Dak Prescott over Derek Carr. I think Dak Prescott has a higher ceiling. He has not realized that ceiling yet, but he has been a perennial playoff caliber quarterback. Derek Carr has not. He's made the playoffs twice in his career. That's it. So, in one of the years when they were good, he didn't even get to play in the playoffs because he got injured. So, he's not a player. He's not even a playoff quarterback. He's a stat compiler in the regular season who's not good enough to get a team consistently in the playoffs.
It's wild, man. Like it's a wild. Like it's kind of crazy to think about, right? If you think about. Let me do something real quick. So like the whole thing about Carr not being a playoff quarterback and Dak Prescott is a playoff quarterback, like that's a weird statistic to just throw out there. Like, the fact that Dallas has made the playoffs 7 times with Dak Prescott, but Dak Prescott is 2-5 in playoff games, I don't think that's I wouldn't say that's a positive. You know, like Dallas wins games in the regular season, cool, but beyond that, like, how is this a positive? You look at someone like Matt Stafford, like take out the Super Bowl run, and you've got a guy who was 0-4 in the playoffs in his career, and had only made the playoffs 3 times in his entire career of Detroit. So you could have easily said, well, look, I mean, Matt Stafford's not really a playoff kind of guy, Sean. Maybe we should go in a different direction. But when you factor in, like, well, he played for the Lions. Who were the coaches for the Lions? Like, what was the situation? That's totally different than here. You got to look at the player, not the results. Like, you can go down the list. Deshaun Watson. Like, Deshaun Watson got whatever it was, $240 million guaranteed. They traded everything they could for him. You know, all that stuff. He's 1-2. He's had He's had 2 playoff appearances, and he's 1-2. Like, sweet. You know, like Kirk Cousins, I think, is 1-4 in playoff appearances. Let's see Kirk Cousins. So it's just crazy when you look at, and I'm not saying Derek Carr is Matt Stafford, or I'm not saying this. Yeah, Kirk Cousins is 1-4. He's 1-4 in his career in the playoffs. So when Moscona, when he starts talking about, like, well, Carr's not Cousins, or Carr's not Prescott, or Carr's not this player, that player, this player, he's not a playoff guy, and this guy is. You look around the league, and it's like, I mean, there's a lot going on. You know, like, there's a lot of variables, and Cousins would be 0-5 if it wasn't for this horrible game against Drew Brees and the Saints. I was at this game. A horrific Kyle Rudolph ending to the season for the Saints. That was not a fun time to be a Saints fan. But, you know, you look around and it's like the stuff that's being asked of Carr, but other quarterbacks are omitted from being judged for, blows my mind. Like, when you look at this, is this something where you're like, now this is what a playoff quarterback looks like right here? I would guess if you ask Cowboy fans, like, they're probably not too happy with this.
Dak has consistently been in the playoffs. They just haven't won in the playoffs. You know who else did that for?
Yeah, who cares? Yeah.
For a long time? Matthew Stafford.
Wow, that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. I mean, I'm ahead of the game, but that's pretty wild. That, I'm not gonna lie. That's a very Truman Show simulation type situation there. Wow.
Really good quarterback, put up good numbers, got Detroit into the playoffs, and they never did anything.
Well, like we just saw, he got them into the playoffs. What was it? 3 times, twice, whatever it was. So, yeah, not really.
He goes to the Rams, better situation, boom, Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I think Dak, in a different scenario, different situation, different team, could find a similar path to Matthew Stafford. I'm not saying that's in New Orleans. I'm just saying I believe that's possible.
That's a completely different situation. Like Stafford with the Lions and the teams that Dak has had in Dallas are totally different. Dak has had some stacked teams in Dallas. Dallas has had some 12, 13 win teams with Dak. He's had, at times, the best running back in the NFL, the best wide receiver in the NFL, the best defense in the NFL. Like he hasn't been playing in Detroit. No offense to Detroit, but kind of offense to Detroit. The team Stafford has had during his times in Detroit, not great. Okay. So, I mean, I don't think, I mean, this isn't even controversial, but Dak's best days are behind him. Like it is what it is. Dak is not a spring chicken. Dak is not a guy who it's like, well, I'm not sure if he's reached the peak of his powers. Well, I'm not sure if he's reached his ceilings. I am very sure that he has reached his ceiling. I am very sure we have seen the best of Dak Prescott. So if you're signing Dak Prescott, you are signing a Kirk Cousins. You are signing a Derek Carr. You are signing a veteran guy who you think can stabilize your franchise, but that's pretty much it. And to expect anything else out of that is kind of wild. So I think Dak is wildly overrated, and I think it's an insane conversation to be having right now.
Not believe that's a possible scenario for Derek Carr. So if somehow it could work out that the Saints and the Cowboys could trade quarterbacks, I'd take Dak over Derek Carr in a millisecond. And again, that's not to say Derek Carr or Dak is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I don't believe that he is today.
I don't think he's even top 10. I don't think that's crazy to say either. Like, I don't think he, and if you're factoring in contracts and stuff, why the hell would you trade Derek Carr and his team-friendly contract for Dak Prescott with his contract situation? Like, Dak is probably going to be paid. If he is paid, he's going to be paid as one of the 3 or 4 highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. It's just how the market works. He will be paid similarly to Trevor Lawrence. It might not be as long of a contract. It might not be all that, but it's going to be the same, like, year over year kind of thing. He will get $50 million a year. So in what universe can you justify trading Derek Carr in that contract for Dak Prescott in his contract if you're the Saints? You think getting Dak Prescott is going to enhance? I would bet my bottom dollar that if you tweeted at any of the big time bookmakers, the Matt Metcalfs of the world, the Jeffrey Bensons of the world, the Chris Andrews of the world, if you tweeted at them and said, hey, if Dak Prescott was traded to the Saints, what would their win total be increased by? I would bet you all of them say it would not be increased. It would not move. The Saints are 7.5 right now. If they got Dak Prescott, it would be 7.5. And the odds to win the Super Bowl would remain the same. Dak Prescott is not a needle mover. So if you want to make that very, very parallel, very, very horizontal trade for $50 million a year for a team that's already salary capped, I guess it's a good thing that Matt's not in the front office.
But I don't believe Derek Carr is a top 20 quarterback in the NFL, and I believe Dak is probably somewhere around the top 10. So it would be a dramatic improvement from what you have, still not what you want. My best option, as I said this year in the draft, and will continue to say, is to go draft. Use a first-round pick to draft your franchise. Do what teams that end up with franchise quarterbacks do. They take their swing in round one. Go draft your franchise. Or you can keep picking Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler and hoping that a day 3 pick hits. Maybe. Probably not. Maybe. Or you could do what the Bengals did with Joe Burrow. You can get
They're the first overall pick. Joe Burrow was like a generational talent coming out of college. Like, what the hell? Well, I mean, you could say the same, you could say the same thing about, go do what the Jets did with Zach Wilson. It ain't that easy, brother. It's not that easy to go take a quarterback in the first round and have them work out. Go look at the Jaguars. No offense, but offense. The Jaguars went and took Trevor Lawrence. Look how that worked out for them. They're saddled up for $275 million, and they haven't won nothing. And Trevor Lawrence is 10 games under 500. We showed the comparisons a couple videos ago. It's not easy. Go do what the Bears did and draft Justin Fields. See how that worked out. Go do what the Jets did. Go do what there's a whole lot more examples of it not working out with a first round quarterback than there is of it working out. So, it's not that easy either. It's just I don't know. I mean, this is just such a crazy video.
Aggressive. You can move up and take your franchise quarterback. Do what the Falcons just did. You can call it stupid as you want.
It was stupid.
And I get it. But you ain't winning without a franchise quarterback, and they took a swing. Let's see.
He's not going to play.
We can get one. Okay. Respect. Saints have done it once in their history. Still think that.
Yeah, and the Saints have been one of the most winning. The Saints have been one of the most winning. Hey, newsflash. The Saints have been much better as a franchise in the last 20 years than the Dallas Cowboys. So, and you know how many quarterbacks we took in the first round in those last 20 years? 0. So, for I don't know. I mean, for all this, this conversation about the Saints should do this, the Saints should do that, what we're doing is kind of working. What we're doing has been pretty chill for the last 2 decades.
That's going to be the better path. Anyway, you want to read it. Bill Barnwell, a really.
It is kind of funny how it's the way that the Saints saved the franchise, the way that they found relevancy, all that stuff. He's do it the other way. The other way is how you find success. It's brother, don't you remember 3 years ago when we were 13-3? We were winning 12 games, 13 games a year and going to the NFC title games and stuff. Don't you remember whenever that was from signing the free agent quarterback? That was from hitting on Drew Brees. I'm not saying that's easy to replicate, but we didn't find. You don't have to find success through a first round quarterback. That. What's going on here, my guy?
Extensive piece about Dak Prescott's contract situation, how New Orleans could be a potential landing spot, and how Carr could end up with a star on the helmet. Hey, thanks so much.
That's crazy. I mean, this is a crazy video. This is one of those things where it's I don't want to I just don't know how this segment can make it. How can this segment make it on the show? Where it's we are, late June. So you got July, August. So we're 2.5 months away from the season starting. We're 2.5 months. Let's just call it 75 days. So we're 75 days away from the season. And how in the hell is there a conversation of, well, what if the Saints traded Derek Carr for Dak Prescott? What? This is crazy. It's crazy, man. I don't think I have to sum it up, but I don't think this can happen. I don't think it makes any sense for the Saints. It doesn't make any sense for the Saints. The Saints aren't interested in Dak Prescott. The Saints won't be getting Dak Prescott. Not an option. The Saints would get Tom Brady before they got Dak Prescott. Both have about the same percentage of happening. Could Carr get moved to the Cowboys? That is much more feasible, but I mean, this is. What else can you really say? Wow. Well, I mean, there it is. There it is. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. ESPN 104.5. Hey, give me a call. Give me a call, man. I'll give me a call. ESPN New Orleans 100.3. Give me a call. Jesus. Dog, give me a call, man. I will save it. Ladies and gentlemen, get on down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Peace.